The marble foyer of Eleanor Mitchell's mansion gleamed under the crystal chandelier, every surface polished to perfection for Christmas morning. Sarah Chen adjusted her worn wool coat and glanced down at 8-year-old Emma, whose eyes sparkled with the same anticipation that had filled Sarah's heart 2 years ago before everything changed. "Mommy, do you think Grandma Ellie got me something good this year?" Emma whispered, her small hand clutching a carefully wrapped present she'd made in art class, a painted ceramic mug with "World's Best Grandma" in wobbly letters. Sarah's chest tightened. "I'm sure she did, sweetheart." The lie tasted bitter, but Emma's hope was too precious to crush with honesty. The living room buzzed with familiar chaos. Mark's 3 children, Tyler, Madison, and little Sophia, raced around the towering Christmas tree, their laughter echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Mark sat slouched in his father's old leather chair, scrolling through his phone, while his wife Jennifer arranged gifts with military precision. "Sarah, Emma," Eleanor's voice rang out, honey sweet but sharp around the edges. She emerged from the kitchen wearing an immaculate cream cashmere sweater, her silver hair styled in perfect waves. At 68, Eleanor Mitchell commanded attention like a queen holding court. "How lovely that you could make it." The emphasis on could wasn't lost on Sarah, as if attending Christmas morning with Emma's grandmother was optional rather than tradition. "Thank you for having us, Mrs. Mitchell." Sarah had stopped calling her Eleanor after the divorce papers were signed. Some bridges, once burned, left only ashes. Emma bounded forward, ceramic mug extended like an offering. "I made this for you, Grandma Ellie." Eleanor's smile faltered for just a moment before resurging. "How thoughtful, dear. Why don't you put it by the tree for now?" The gift-giving began with Eleanor's theatrical flair. She presented each of Mark's children with identical boxes, sleek iPads in gleaming cases. Tyler, 12, whooped with delight. Madison, 10, squealed and hugged her grandmother fiercely. Even 6-year-old Sophia clapped her hands in glee, though she barely understood what she'd received. But Eleanor wasn't finished. From her purse, she produced 3 crisp envelopes. "And a little something extra for my special grandchildren." Sarah watched Emma's face light up as each child opened their envelope to reveal 5 $100 bills, $500 each. Sarah's monthly grocery budget, handed out like candy. Emma stepped forward, her homemade gift still clutched in her small hands, expectation written across her features. The room fell silent, except for the crackling fireplace. Eleanor's gaze swept over Emma as if she were a piece of furniture that had been moved out of place. "Oh, Emma darling, I already gave you your gift last week, remember?" The words hit like ice water. Sarah's mind raced back to the previous Tuesday, when Eleanor had stopped by unannounced. She'd handed Emma a thin plastic bag containing a dollar store coloring book, the kind with cheap paper that tore when you pressed too hard with a crayon. $15, maybe less. "But Grandma," Emma's voice wavered, confusion replacing excitement. You thought what, exactly?" Eleanor's tone carried the kind of chill that could freeze summer, "that you deserved the same treatment as my real grandchildren." The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Mark finally looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. The children, sensing tension they couldn't understand, grew quiet. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, which had already shattered when she discovered Mark's affairs, but something deeper. Her protective instincts, the fierce maternal love that had carried her through single motherhood, through 12-hour nursing shifts, through the humiliation of starting over at 33. "Emma is your real granddaughter." Sarah's voice came out steady despite the tremor in her hands. "She's Mark's daughter, your son's child." Eleanor's laugh was crystalline and cutting. "Emma is the daughter of the woman who destroyed my family, who broke up my son's marriage with her demands and her drama." Her eyes glittered with malice. "Some gifts have to be earned, Sarah. Perhaps if you'd been a better wife, we wouldn't be in this situation." The injustice of it stole Sarah's breath. Eleanor knew the truth, that Mark had cheated with 3 different women, that Sarah had tried counseling, forgiveness, everything except sacrificing her self-respect. But Eleanor had rewritten history to suit her narrative, casting Sarah as the villain in her family's story. Emma's lower lip quivered. She still held the ceramic mug, now seeming pathetically small in her hands. "I'm sorry, Grandma Ellie. I didn't mean to be bad." That's when Sarah understood with crystalline clarity that this wasn't about the gifts. This was about power, control, and Eleanor's need to punish Sarah through the most innocent victim possible. An 8-year-old girl who just wanted her grandmother's love. The game had changed, and Sarah Chen was done playing defense. The weeks following Christmas peeled back layers of Eleanor's cruelty like an infected wound. Sarah had always known her former mother-in-law resented her, but she'd underestimated the depth of Eleanor's vindictiveness and her willingness to weaponize an innocent child. It started with small discoveries. When Sarah picked Emma up from Mark's weekend visits, her daughter would mention birthday parties and family gatherings that Sarah had never heard about. Tyler had the coolest bounce house at his party, Emma said one Sunday evening, buckling her seatbelt. I wish I could have gone. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You weren't invited to Tyler's birthday party. Grandma Ellie said it was just for the real cousins. Emma's matter-of-fact tone made it worse somehow. She was accepting this rejection as normal, internalizing Eleanor's poison as truth. That night, Sarah did something she'd sworn she wouldn't do. She stalked Eleanor's social media. The evidence was damning and systematic. Eleanor's Facebook and Instagram accounts were shrines to her perfect family, dozens of photos of Mark's children at zoo trips, museum visits, and restaurant outings. Photos Sarah remembered Emma mentioning wistfully, events she'd assumed Emma had been too busy to attend. But searching further back, Sarah found the smoking gun. Photos from Emma's 7th birthday party were gone. Pictures from last year's Easter egg hunt, deleted. It was as if Eleanor was systematically erasing Emma from the family history, one digital memory at a time. Meanwhile, every minor achievement of the other grandchildren was documented and celebrated. The final straw came on a Tuesday evening in late January. Emma trudged through the front door after spending the afternoon at Mark's house, her backpack dragging behind her and tears streaming down her cheeks. Sweetheart, what happened? Sarah knelt down, pulling Emma into her arms. Madison said. Emma's voice broke into sobs. She said Grandma Ellie told her that I'm not really family anymore because you and Daddy got divorced. She said that's why I can't come to fun places with them. Sarah felt something volcanic rise in her chest. Eleanor hadn't just excluded Emma, she'd poisoned the other children against her, turning cousins into strangers and family gatherings into sources of shame. Am I not family anymore, Mommy? Emma's question was barely a whisper. Why doesn't Grandma Ellie love me like she loves them? In that moment, staring into her daughter's wounded eyes, Sarah understood that this wasn't going to stop. Eleanor wasn't content with punishing Sarah, she was systematically destroying Emma's sense of belonging, her connection to half her heritage, her belief in her own worth. Eleanor had chosen war, and Sarah was finally ready to fight back. Sarah's nursing background had taught her that successful treatment required accurate diagnosis, careful planning, and precise execution. As she tucked Emma into bed that Tuesday night, she applied the same methodical approach to Eleanor Mitchell, the patient and narcissistic woman whose entire identity revolved around social status and public perception. The diagnosis: terminal cruelty masked by performative charity and family values. The treatment: strategic exposure of the truth. Sarah spent the next 3 weeks conducting reconnaissance with the thoroughness of a clinical researcher. She started with Eleanor's social media presence, screenshotting every post about charity work and family values. The woman bragged constantly about her philanthropic activities, chairing the Riverside Children's Hospital Gala, organizing food drives, sponsoring underprivileged youth. But Sarah's hospital connections told a different story. A quick call to her friend Maria in the development office at Riverside revealed that Eleanor's generous donations were mostly promises and photo opportunities. Her actual contributions barely covered the cost of the fancy invitations to events she insisted on hosting. The real breakthrough came when Sarah remembered the keys. During Eleanor's hip surgery 6 months ago, Sarah had helped coordinate home care, managing medications and physical therapy appointments. Eleanor had given her a spare key set, and in the chaos of the divorce aftermath, no one had thought to ask for them back. Sarah's first reconnaissance mission was a simple wellness check. Eleanor had mentioned feeling under the weather on Facebook. She let herself in with homemade soup, playing the concerned former daughter-in-law perfectly. While Eleanor rested, Sarah explored. Eleanor's home office was a treasure trove of contradictions. Bank statements showed lavish spending on personal luxuries while charitable contributions were suspiciously modest. More damning were the tax documents scattered across her desk, itemized deductions claiming donations to organizations Sarah knew she'd never actually supported. Eleanor was committing tax fraud, probably to the tune of thousands of dollars annually. But the psychological profile was what fascinated Sarah most. Eleanor's greatest fear wasn't financial ruin. She had plenty of money. It was social humiliation. Her country club membership, her position on various charity boards, her reputation as the perfect widow and grandmother, these were the pillars of her identity. Sarah photographed everything with her phone, building a comprehensive dossier. Eleanor's fake charity claims, her cruel comments about Emma captured in text messages to other family members that she'd carelessly left open on her laptop. Screenshots of her social media posts bragging about family values while systematically excluding her own granddaughter. The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity: use Eleanor's own vanity and carelessness against her. Sarah would dismantle Eleanor's carefully constructed image piece by piece, using nothing but the truth. Phase 1 would be subtle, small social embarrassments that could be dismissed as accidents or misunderstandings. Let Eleanor doubt her own security, make her paranoid about who knew what. Phase 2 would escalate to her charity network, expose the gap between Eleanor's public claims and private actions to the very people she desperately wanted to impress. Phase 3 would be the coup de grace, a public revelation that would destroy Eleanor's social standing while vindicating Emma's worth. Sarah understood that revenge was a dish best served cold, but she also knew from her medical training that the most effective treatments often involved controlled escalation. Start with the lowest effective dose, then increase as needed until the desired outcome was achieved. Eleanor had spent months systematically destroying an 8-year-old's self-worth. Sarah would spend the next few months systematically destroying the foundation of Eleanor's entire public persona. The difference was that Sarah's destruction would be built on truth, while Eleanor's had been built on lies. Justice, Sarah had learned, was just another form of medicine, and she was about to provide Eleanor Mitchell with exactly the treatment she'd earned. Sarah's first strike came during Mark's birthday dinner in February. The family gathered at Eleanor's dining room, the same table where Emma had been humiliated just weeks before. This time Sarah came prepared. While Eleanor bustled in the kitchen, boasting loudly about her latest charity board meeting, Sarah quietly accessed Eleanor's Facebook account on the tablet left carelessly open on the side table. Eleanor's password was pathetically predictable: her late husband's birthday. The private messages were a goldmine of petty gossip and cruel observations about Eleanor's supposed friends. Sarah selected the choicest excerpts: Eleanor calling Margaret Thornfield a desperate social climber with more money than sense, describing Patricia Webb's charity auction as a vanity project for women with nothing better to do, and dismissing the entire Riverside Women's Club as a collection of bored housewives playing at importance. Eleanor's final gambit came 2 weeks later with all the subtlety of a cornered animal. She summoned the family for an emergency meeting at her house, her voice trembling with manufactured concern when she called Mark. "I'm worried about Sarah's mental state," Eleanor confided, her words carefully chosen. "Her behavior has become increasingly erratic and vindictive. I think Emma might be in danger from her own mother's instability." Sarah arrived at the mansion that Sunday afternoon to find not just Mark and Jennifer, but also Eleanor's remaining allies, her neighbor Patricia Webb, her book club president Margaret Chen, and surprisingly, Father Morrison from St. Catherine's Church. Eleanor had assembled her own tribunal, witnesses to what she clearly intended to be Sarah's final humiliation. "Thank you all for coming," Eleanor began, positioning herself like a prosecutor addressing a jury. "I've called this gathering because I'm genuinely concerned about my granddaughter's welfare." Emma sat beside Sarah on the sofa, confused by the formal atmosphere but trusting her mother's reassuring squeeze of her hand. "Sarah has been displaying increasingly unstable behavior," Eleanor continued, her voice carrying the perfect blend of concern and authority. "Paranoid accusations, manipulation of family relationships, and what I can only describe as systematic harassment of our family and friends." Margaret Chen nodded sympathetically. Patricia Webb murmured agreement. Even Father Morrison looked concerned. She's been poisoning Emma against her own family, filling that child's head with lies about being unwanted. Eleanor's performance was masterful, her voice breaking with just the right amount of emotion. I think professional intervention is necessary. Supervised visitation only until Sarah can prove she's stable enough to properly care for Emma. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer's lawyer instincts were clearly engaged, but even she seemed swayed by Eleanor's compelling narrative. Sarah sat quietly through the entire performance, her phone recording everything from her purse. When Eleanor finished, Sarah simply smiled. "That's a very creative story, Eleanor. Would you like to hear what you really think about Emma?" Before Eleanor could respond, Sarah pulled out her phone and pressed play. Eleanor's own voice filled the room, crystal clear from recordings captured during Sarah's reconnaissance missions. "That woman's bastard child has been nothing but a burden on this family since the day she was born." The room went dead silent. Emma's hand tightened in Sarah's. The recording continued. "I don't know why Mark doesn't just get full custody and ship Emma off to boarding school somewhere. Anywhere really. I wish she would just disappear from our lives completely." Margaret Chen's face went white. Patricia Webb's mouth fell open. Father Morrison looked physically ill, but Sarah wasn't finished. She played another clip. "The other children have started asking why Emma can't come to their parties. I told them she's not really family anymore. Divorce changes things. They need to understand that some people earn their place in this family, and others don't." And finally, the most damning recording of all, Eleanor's voice dripping with venom. "Sarah thinks she can use that little bastard to manipulate her way back into our good graces. Well, she's about to learn that some mistakes can't be fixed. Emma will never be anything more than a reminder of how Sarah destroyed my son's life." The silence stretched until it became suffocating. Emma's quiet sob broke the spell. "Grandma Ellie," Emma's voice was tiny broken, "do you really hate me?" Eleanor's composure finally cracked completely. "Those recordings are there taken out of context. You can't possibly understand." "I understand perfectly." Mark's voice cut through the room like a blade. His face was ashen, but his eyes burned with a fury Sarah had never seen before. "I understand that my mother has been systematically abusing my daughter while pretending to be the victim." Jennifer stood abruptly, her lawyer's mask firmly in place. "We're leaving now. And Eleanor, if you ever, and I mean ever, come near my children or Emma again, you'll be hearing from my firm about harassment charges." Margaret Chen and Patricia Webb were already gathering their purses, their faces flushed with embarrassment and horror. The social connections Eleanor had spent decades cultivating evaporated in real time as her carefully constructed mask disintegrated. "You don't understand." Eleanor's voice rose to a shriek. "I was protecting this family. Sarah is the problem, not me." But the room was already emptying. Father Morrison paused at the door, his disappointment palpable. "Eleanor, I think you need to seriously examine your heart and ask for forgiveness, not from us, but from God, and that little girl you've hurt so deeply." Soon only Sarah, Emma, and Eleanor remained in the vast living room. Eleanor slumped in her chair, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Her empire of lies finally collapsed around her. Sarah stood, lifting Emma into her arms. The little girl buried her face in her mother's shoulder, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was free. "You destroyed everything," Eleanor whispered. Sarah looked down at the broken woman who had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable. "No, Eleanor. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see what was already there." 6 months later, Sarah watched Emma blow out 9 candles on her birthday cake, surrounded by friends from school and neighbors who had become chosen family. The party was small but filled with genuine laughter, a stark contrast to the performative gatherings at Eleanor's mansion. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Sarah encouraged. Emma closed her eyes tight, then opened them with a smile that reached her soul. "I wished for us to always be happy like this, Mommy." The transformation in Emma had been gradual but profound. Without Eleanor's toxic influence poisoning her sense of self-worth, Emma had blossomed. She no longer asked why her grandmother didn't love her. Instead, she spoke excitedly about her art teacher Mrs. Rodriguez, who displayed Emma's paintings in the school hallway, and their neighbor Mr. Kim, who taught her to tend the community garden. Quality over quantity. Sarah had explained when Emma wondered why their family felt smaller now. It's better to have people who love you for who you are than people who only love you when you're useful to them. Mark had proven surprisingly supportive through the aftermath. The recordings had shattered his willful blindness about his mother's character. He'd increased his custody time with Emma and stopped pressuring Sarah to make peace with Eleanor for the sake of family harmony. "I'm sorry," he'd said during one of their cordial exchanges. "I should have protected her, protected you both." Sarah had accepted his apology but kept her boundaries firm. Some damage couldn't be undone, only healed around. Eleanor's isolation was complete and self-imposed. She'd attempted reconciliation exactly once, arriving at Sarah's apartment with expensive gifts and hollow apologies. Emma had politely but firmly declined the presents. "Thank you, but I don't need them," Emma had said with 8-year-old wisdom. "I have everything I need already." Eleanor's country club membership had been quietly revoked. Her charity board positions had been restructured to no longer require her participation. She'd become a cautionary tale whispered about in the circles where she'd once held court. The most satisfying part, Sarah reflected, wasn't Eleanor's downfall. It was Emma's rise. Her daughter had learned that love wasn't conditional, that family wasn't defined by blood alone, and that she deserved people who celebrated her existence rather than merely tolerated it. Sometimes Sarah caught Emma humming while she drew, lost in creative joy that had nothing to do with seeking approval. Those moments made every calculated move, every strategic revelation, every difficult choice worthwhile. The best revenge, Sarah had discovered, wasn't destroying someone's life. It was building a better one free from their influence. Eleanor could keep her empty mansion and bitter isolation. Sarah and Emma had something far more valuable: authentic love, genuine community, and the unshakable knowledge that they deserved nothing less. As Emma ran off to play with her friends, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. She'd taught her daughter the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from people who don't recognize your worth, and build a life with those who do. The war was over and they had won by choosing not to fight it anymore.